In my personal quest to review and find the most mid anime ever, I've seen a handful. However, few anime have ever felt like an absolute waste of talent or waste of an interesting premise as Temple. No one can survive on Lonliness. Temple is an ecchi harem anime that stars a guy. As a child, his father left for cigarettes and women and never came back. As this guy has aged, he has sworn off romance and is dedicating himself to his grades and the promise of decent schooling, until a random woman he sees on the street is just too sexy that he now takes an interest in women and his grades tank, and he focuses his whole life for an undisclosed amount of time on partying and mixers until he has enough and wants to go to a temple to become a priest and learn to control his lustful, worldly desires to better himself. After a call, his uncle tells him of a place he once served as a priest and lets him borrow his old robes. Arriving at said temple, and a lemony snicket series of unfortunate events and typical anime hijinks occur, and he finds out the temple is now a nunnery, and the woman that sent him into a lustful spiral is 17 years old and looking for an arranged marriage partner to keep the temple open. Yes, the established 21-year-old college student who spent no time or interest with women saw a 16 or 17-year-old girl in the streets and went off the deep end. And spoiler alert, 17 is the oldest member of the harem. A 21-year-old protagonist and 17 and younger harem members. Now, since drawings don't have human rights, we can ignore this even though it's hella weird. But is this show degenerate? You've probably seen a few clips floating around on r/anime plot, and most of the scenes are in the OVA special episode, which is a literal fever dream. Most of it is spoken sex jokes, and the main character Akagami punching himself in the face for thinking worldly thoughts. But those jokes don't really land, and I didn't find them all that funny personally. Also, Akagami gets kicked in the balls a bunch. It's honestly painful to watch at times. I would rate this a 1 out of 10 per my tastes. I was annoyed by half the cast, and I couldn't get invested in any of them. I rate this anime so low because it's the first time I've ever watched anything at 2 times speed, and I did that to finish this anime faster. Tried as I might, I could not get invested. There were some episodes I got halfway through watching, got bored, did something else, and had to rewatch the whole thing because I couldn't remember what happened. And no matter what I did, I just could not get invested in any of these characters or the cast. The main character doesn't have any character traits besides the typical anime harem protagonist character. He's hardworking, kind, and perverted. But the twist is he punishes his own perversions because
Comedy.
the rest of the cast is barely one note. You have the naive, hardworking girl, the tsundere who idolized an imaginary version of a sister, the perverted middle school girl, a girl who, like Akagami, came to the area to swear off her family's lustful heritage and control herself, her handler, and a head nun that runs the place, and probably would be my favorite character if they gave her screen time to flesh her out. The actual story, however, is lackluster. The story itself is a solid idea, but every episode somehow feels like a disjointed slog. The story beats themselves seem to connect in theory, yet every new episode felt like the beginning of a new season. Sure, it's the same show, but it feels like some time has passed off screen, and that's probably where the story went. Like, it goes from Akagami's fall from grace, him getting to know the girls to not be kicked out of the nunnery, helping the 17-year-old get into an arranged marriage to keep the temple open, train for priest training, and Christmas shenanigans. The animation and the visible comedy and facial expressions are good, don't get me wrong, but I only let out a slight smile during episode like 11 or 12 or so, out of 12 episodes, 13 if you count the OVA. So for me, there's attempts at comedy, but it landed once. The story is too surface level to feel like it holds any weight, and somehow every story beat feels so generic that you can predict almost word for word what's about to happen, even if you've never seen the show. It's formulaic, expressive, and shallow. I'd compare it as an AI art piece versus an oil painting. Both look pretty, but one feels soulless and the other has an aura of passion around it. On a degeneracy scale, I'd rate it at a 2 out of 10. It has a handful of scenes that are more than the typical jokes, but it's nothing exciting to see, unless you count the OVA episodes, which involves a naked middle schooler due to body swapping, and a literal fever dream of the main character while he's sick. It's not consistent, and it's mostly low effort, run-of-the-mill jokes that somehow land with the same power as Aqua's goddess punch. Flashy, but ineffective by all means. Honestly, there's 1.5 million shows that are by far and away better than this waste of a concept. However, if any of the character designs stuck out to you, feel free to do some supplemental lore research on a certain site, as I'm certain the doujins give these characters more personality.